for the opportunity. Actually, what I submitted was more about the literature review of the previous study, which is related to the topics I want to explore. So I don't have a complete paper about this topic at this time. So today I just want to talk about some ideas I have based on these studies. So the climate change exposes more people to more frequent and severe extreme weather events, including heat waves, wildfires, floods, and storms. And laypersons have a hard time understanding the risks of climate change conveyed in scientific publications. So implementing effective public policy depends not only on climate science, but also on public perception of the occurrence and seriousness of climate change. So actually, a growing body of literature investigates the determinants of climate change perceptions and behaviors, like the social, the political, the economic, educational, and the geographical identities. And however, the perceptions are not unchanged. So it's necessary to consider how different people update their beliefs over time or after being exposed to repeated shocks such as subjective experience and information. As for the subjective experience, the relationship between subjective experience and climate perceptions has received considerable attention. However, the results are mixed due to the different research settings, variable choices, and methodologies. In general, scholars found that short-term variation in temperature increases climate opinions, although the size is likely to be small. So what's more interesting is to identify the shifts in climate perceptions after repeated exposure. So Moore and her co-authors used temperature and precipitation as independent variables and show that repeated exposure may hinder public perception of climate change. So maybe other events like wildfires, snowstorms, flood are waiting to be explored. Okay, and as for the information shock, so survey experiments has been conducted to evaluate the causal effects of providing scientific information about climate change on respondents' beliefs and their willingness to contribute to causes that seek to mitigate climate change. They found that beliefs about climate change have increased. However, behaviors to combat climate change haven't significantly impacted. So further research is needed to explore the reason for this discrepancy. So I'm working on a project which is using the Twitter data to analyze the subjective experience and climate perceptions, but still on the data collection stage. So next I will maybe focus more on the information shock because this is a lab experimental one. So actually at first, so from the perspective of the experimental design, I think there are two gaps in the previous studies. So the first one is experimental demand effect, because asking subjects to revise their initial belief after being exposed to the information shock may induce the experimental demand effect, which may overestimate the impact of information shock on climate change beliefs. And the second one is a non-incentive compatible response. So at first, the climate change beliefs surveys are widely used to review the beliefs by using a non-incentive compatible way. So the questions are framed differently and not accurate enough. So which may reveal a not accurate enough response too. I'm not saying survey is not good. Actually, it's super when it's a national investigation. But we can take advantage of the lab experiment to use the incentive compatible method to review a more accurate response, which may better find the relationship between providing information and climate perceptions. So according to the previous studies and gaps I mentioned, so we want to investigate the influence of scientific evidence both for and against climate change and the peer perception information on individuals' climate beliefs. There are two behavioral models that could help us to gives them hypotheses. The first one is Bayesian updating, so which indicates the greater the magnitude of information shocks, the significant the transformation in beliefs. The second one is confirmation bias, which indicates that when exposed to information in the same direction, individuals tend to update their beliefs. However, when exposed to information in the opposite direction, the changes in beliefs are not significant. We are conducting a lab experiment to investigate our research questions. Instead of revealing the post beliefs after the shock, we review the initial beliefs and measure the post belief using an action to donate an organization combating climate change. To be more specific, we obtain subjects' initial climate change belief by asking some data-driven questions using incentive-compatible elicitation methods and randomly shock their beliefs with corrective information. And after receiving the information, subjects are asked to donate money to an organization that combats climate change if a session has an information shock. So this is between subjects design, and we have three treatments. The baseline is first initial belief elicitation period, and then the donation period. And the treatment 2 is first initial belief elicitation period, and then some scientific information shock, and the last is a donation period. The treatment 3 is the same as treatment 2, but just to give subjects their peer information instead of scientific information. A more in-depth examination of peer information effects is to divide subjects according to their political ideologies, and then testing how information from the same and different group sources affect their own beliefs. So that's my presentation today. Thank you so much.